Hello and welcome back to the Honest Business podcast. I hope you are very, very well. It has been quite the month at May James. I'm currently recording this in March and we're only halfway through the month, but we've had a real whirlwind of a time. Things like free things launching, and we've done some things, quite a few things for International Women's Day and National Women's Month. And also I got engaged, which if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I now have a beautiful, beautiful ring on my finger, which has happened over the last 3 weeks as well. So it has been a bit of a whirlwind. Today I am answering some of your sales and marketing questions. That just happened to be the theme of the things that came in when I asked for any questions. Although I am laughing because there was a couple of comments saying, we want to know everything about the engagement, talk about the engagement, which is so sweet. I am not going to go into the ins and outs of the engagement in this episode. However, potentially I will cover it in maybe on social or something. Some form. I need to work out how we can do that in a way that works. But needless to say, I had an absolutely gorgeous engagement. I went away and it happened there, and ever since it's been a lovely whirlwind, and I have started to think about wedding plans. We aren't really particularly sure what we want to do. And yeah, it's opening a whole new world, and it's also fascinating from an industry perspective of seeing an industry and how it operates and pricing and just various other bits and pieces that have been revelations already. So I'm sure we will, in the coming months and years, talk about, we can definitely have an episode about kind of learnings from navigating the wedding industry or being a purchaser in such an interesting industry, because I think that would be super cool. However, I am engaged. I will try not to talk about it too much, although I might, who knows. But I am answering your questions today. If you do ever have questions for a Q&A episode, the best place to send them to is either support@mayjames.com, and in the subject just put Honest Business Podcast questions or something like that and send them that way. Or on Instagram, every now and again, I sometimes put a question box up and say, what would you like to know for this episode? I am just watching out of my window that it looks like there could be some work going on outside. So I apologise if the sound of this episode is not the best that it could possibly be, but I'm going to record it anyway because that's how we roll. Imperfect action is key. So let's dive in. I have got 5 questions, and these are all, I think, really interesting because they kind of connect to each other and things that I've talked to people about in the last sort of 2 or 3 months quite a lot. So, first one, how to write qualifying info correctly on a sales page. This is such a great question. When we're thinking about sales pages and trying to reduce the length that it takes for someone to buy from us, which is what this technically, often with the sales page, we're trying to increase conversion time, we're trying to make a seamless process, we're trying to make things easy. Writing qualifying information on a sales page can be really effective. What we mean by that is writing information that is going to help the person reading it know whether or not this service or product is for them. And ideally, we want it so it's really fast. We want them to be like, yes, this is me. Oh my goodness, they finally get me. I want to buy from them. Or they go, this is definitely not for me. And then they know that, rather than getting entangled in your sales process, wasting, your time, team members' time, etc., of resource that is not really beneficial for either party. So writing qualified info correctly, it depends how intense you're going to go with this. If you are someone who is really not necessarily niching, but has got a real clear understanding of what are you trying to do and who are you trying to speak to, and you want to capture a specific type of person, then being specific as possible is great. So if you can say, we solve this problem for this person who is struggling with XYZ thing, that is really amazing. It doesn't have to be a struggle, so it doesn't have to be a negative connotation. You can do it so that it's actually desire-based, and then it's really fun, and then it's really exciting. So it might be, we help this type of person do this type of thing who want to have XYZ in their life, their business, their world. And that, I would say, for most businesses feels like a better fit. Sometimes when it's B2B, I actually don't think there's anything wrong with a bit of pain point marketing, because I think ultimately when people are buying B2B and they're buying, they're not spending their own money, they're not spending their personal money, they're spending the business money. Business owners, business stakeholders within a business, team members in a business, whoever's got buying power in a business understands what their issues are, or needs educated about their issues. But if they understand, if they're problem aware and they're sat on your sales page figuring out are they going to buy from you or not, you actually showing that you understand what their problem is really important, because sometimes people feel like their contractors, the people that they're hiring, the experts that they're hiring, don't fully understand their problem. If they don't fully feel like, if they're not convinced that you understand their problem, they're going to really struggle to buy into saying a yes quickly. So I think it's really key if you can be really specific. So instead of saying, someone who wants to value their health, maybe it's like you sell something that's helps them to live a happy, strong life. Rather than just saying, we help people who value their health and want to live a happy and strong life, really getting clear on what about that situation would someone resonate with. Because if that was targeted to a 15-year-old, or if that's targeted to a 50-year-old, the conceptualization piece would be very different. The examples that you could use, the situations that they're in would be very different. So it might be you want to be there for your grandchildren. You want to be able to participate in sports day for the kind of grandparents or the parents and guardians race. You want to be able to, when you go on holiday to Greece in the summer, you want to be able to do that 3-hour hike up some mountain that you're interested in. Really contextualizing that is much more effective than you just saying some blanket statement. I think people get the qualifying info thing wrong because they're really conscious that they don't want to alienate people. But I think if you want, especially if you need to get a certain type of person into your business, this is really, really crucial. And if you're a location-based business, you need to stand out. If you have got competitors around you where, the pricing's the same, you're struggling to differentiate, because let's face it, some location-based businesses, differentiation is difficult. And your brand is a huge reason as to how you can do that. But one of the other things is, why can't you look at how can someone just feel that they're seen and heard and valued by you specifically over all the other people who do what you do? What I would say as well is you need to make sure that your qualifying information is thread throughout the sales page. So sometimes what people do is they just have like one box. They have like this is for you if, and then they describe this person. That's fine, but it's not great. And you need, the more that it reads through and it kind of threads into what you're sharing, the much more effective the message is going to be. So that would be something that I'd really recommend that you look at and think about. I would also suggest that you figure out on your qualifying information, is it just a list of characteristics? If it's a list of characteristics, that is not going to work. A list of characteristics is fine, but you don't want to just list them. You want characteristics plus lived experience plus real life habitual things that is going on for them. So really they understand on a weekly basis this happens. On a monthly basis that issue pops up. Maybe in 5 years' time, maybe let's just go with this example that we're talking about. Maybe their daughter is going to get married. What from that can you pull that would help them qualify and see themselves in your service? That's where the value lies, and that's how you can get it to really convert effectively. The other thing I would say is test this. If you are building a sales page and if you feel like, my goodness, this feels too shoehorned into one type of person, this feels too heavy on one type of place, I would suggest having 2 or 3 sales pages, testing them on a really low budget ad and target them specifically. So you're going to have that one we've just talked about. And then if you do have a separate ideal client, a separate customer or a separate industry that you're serving, create another sales page that's effectively the same, but the messaging is different, and test that and see, is that working? Which of the two converts better? Where in the page are they kind of reading to? What is that, what is it that's making them feel that was a worthwhile read for them? And I think if you could spend the time doing that, you will get much better at crafting the copy on a sales page. Next up, this was a good one. How to email leads and not feel like you're bombarding them. So the reality of it is you might bombard them. Some people you're going to bombard. Some people it's not going to be enough. some people are going to be really grateful that you are emailing them and they don't reply to you. This is me. This is me. I love when retailers and things are sending me messages, sending me emails, and I'm like, yes, I want to buy that, and yes, it's on my list, and I haven't replied back, I haven't communicated, but it keeps reminding me. And I just want that extra reminder. It's often when a sale's on, when it's like extra 10% off sale, and then it's like, please just keep sending me another one, because at one point you're going to catch me when it is the right time. And I always think that's important, yeah? Think about when are you, like the time you're sending your emails is really important. Thinking about, are you spreading that time out? If you always send them at 11 a.m., that might be an absolute nightmare time for your ideal client. Test sending them at different times to really get an idea of, can it just be that it's not even the copy, it's just getting them at the right time and them actually seeing it in their inbox because of, however many other hundreds or thousands of emails that they get every single day at 9 a.m. That is a really interesting thing to test. But going back to the question, how do you not feel like you're bombarding them? I would say it's about making sure that you're emailing them with something different. So it's not that we're emailing them with the same thing over and over, which, to be fair, I don't have an issue with. A retailer does that to me and I'm quite happy. But if it's a service that you're selling, you have got much more scope in being able to email around the topic. So it doesn't have to be, here's the thing, come and buy it, here's how you buy it. That doesn't have to be the email every single time. What the email should be is part of a funnel. It should, if you have got someone in a lead, if you've got a group of leads and you're like, right, we've got them in a sales funnel, we want them to convert to something, you then build out your sales funnel and you're thinking about, okay, well, what is all the things, again, going back to buyer's journey, I know we talk about this a lot, but going back to your buyer's journey, plot on the email funnel based on the buyer's journey. What do they need to hear at each point? What is the objection? You can have an objection handling email. You can have multiple of them because there's multiple different objections. So really thinking about, it only needs to be a line at the bottom. It can even be a PS of, if you're ready to take action, here's the thing to buy, or here's the thing to book, whatever, or here's the application. The actual body of the email can be about something, around the topic and around the subject. And I would see it as, think about as well, of almost like you're having a sales call. But instead of having a sales call, you're emailing them. So you're kind of preempting what's going to come up. And if you know your ideal client well enough, or kind of, if you've had in-person interaction with them, or if you had kind of a phone call with them and you've heard what people are saying and what their worries are and why they're saying no and what they're unsure of, you're essentially going to answer all of that in a sales funnel via your emails that you're sending them. Now, the next part of that question was, how many and how often is too much? Everybody is going to have a completely different opinion on this, depending on who you speak to, where their expertise lies, what industry they're in. I would argue that it is industry specific. However, as a whole, for small business owners, you can email them every day. Every day is absolutely fine. Some people will be emailing them multiple times a day, which again, totally up to you. I think every day is a fine thing. If you are talking about, and I think this question might mean, you've kind of got a lead who has pre-qualified, you've tried to sell them something, and they're in the decision-making phase. And if they're in this kind of limbo phase where you're thinking, how often do I follow up? There is an argument of, do you send them a 3 days after whatever that initial sales call was, or after you've sent a proposal or whatever it is that you're selling? 3 days can be a really nice time. If you've had a sales call with them, that should be clarified on the sales call as to when you are following up, or when they're following up, but you need to get a date when you have got permission off them to follow up. However, I would then say you can then contact, say it's 3 days out, then say that you want to 2 days after send another one. Like, I think that's absolutely fine. But what will dictate that is kind of how you run the rest of your marketing within your business. And this is another thing. So if people are used to hearing from you, they're used to seeing you show up, it won't be weird if you then email them every day. But if you're someone who doesn't have any kind of presence, is just kind of email them sporadically because, you want them to buy something, but they haven't had an email from you for 6 months, or you send them one email a month, that is going to feel slightly disjointed in terms of your brand and in terms of what they're managing to contextualize in their head. So this goes back to why having a really consistent, frequent, effective marketing system in your business, and especially an email marketing system in your business that works, is really important. I also think if you are someone who has, let's just say you've got an email funnel and you've put them in the funnel. So maybe they are getting an email every day, but it's not necessarily a, this is what it is, here's what it is, buy it. It's a, here's something around the topic, and then here's a link if you want to move forward. If you pair that with telephone following up, that can be really nice. Using a multi-channel approach can be a really good option. So getting people and ringing them and say, hey, just wondering where you're at with this, wondering how you're finding things, blah, 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 having that conversation, see what comes back from that. Because as long as, if you pick up the phone and they might reject you and say, no, I'm not interested, please can you remove me from constantly emailing me every day, find out why. Because that why is going to inherently aid the ability for you to go and tweak the funnel, to go and change the copy, to add, maybe it's to add, another objection in there that you found out, or it will give you a really solid understanding of why did they like or not like X, Y, and Z thing. There is a general consensus in the email marketing world that the more you email, the more money you make. And I would argue that that is true. There's a lot of data to back that up. But I totally understand this idea of we don't want to just piss people off by constantly sending them information. And I think one of the ways you do avoid that is making sure that you're giving value through those emails that we discussed. Hopefully that has answered that question. Number 4, no, this is question number 3, isn't it? Yeah, question number 3. As a new business, I have intro offers. How long do I leave it to offer a new one? Yeah, this is an interesting question. So, this is where choosing to have an intro offer is a real difficult thing, because and it has to be done with a real strategic output. It also depends on what your brand values are. So first off, this comes down to, what are your brand values? How do you want to sell? And let's just think about this on a scale. So let's just think about sales and how you sell and how people buy from you. There is a massive scale of, I don't care how that works, I just want to make money. Maybe it's even as far as, I don't care if it feels scammy, I don't care if it feels uncomfortable, blah, blah, blah. They just want sales. And then on the other end of the scale, we've got, I'm uber ethical and I'm, I can't even describe it, because basically I won't sell ever. I'm just going to wait for people to come to me because I couldn't possibly want to put myself out there and, potentially offend someone with my sales conversation. Can I just say, I really don't think that's going to happen, but I'm just trying to make up a scale here of two parts, right? Most people are sat somewhere in the middle. Newer businesses tend to be towards the kind of ethical, worried, panicked bit, but most people, if you've got a successful business, are kind of sat somewhere in the middle. What you need to then decide is what fits with your brand. So, are you someone who is happy for there to constantly be an offer going on? Are you someone who's happy for a private offer to be also always going on? So, for example, you might not have a public intro offer, but you might have an offer that is a secret offer that is hidden within inside your welcome sequence of your email, of like they join you and then you're trying to convert them, and part of your conversion is that you have a kind of 20% offer, or you have a here's a free session, or you have some kind of thing in there that is built into it. If you're an online-based business owner, I would not go with what I'm about to say. This is for businesses who are not necessarily online and who are doing more traditional business, something we might say. That welcome email potential offer inside of it, completely fine if you want to do that. It also is going to depend on how you how you want your brand perception to be is ultimately what it comes down to. Some business owners are not bothered. They're not bothered if they put like an intro offer up for X amount and then the next offer is 20 quid less than the one that it was before. Like, people are fine. Some people find that cringe. Some people think, oh God, does it look desperate? Like, that's kind of down to you to decide. I'd always go with, before you launch something, I would like for that to be very clear. Like, normally, if a business came, and they don't rarely come to me for this, but if I was going to build a go-to-market strategy for like a sales go-to-market strategy, marketing strategy for someone doing something like that, people get obsessed with the intro offer, but what I always want to know is what does the 6 months after that follow? Like, what does that look like? What does the promotion look like beyond that? And often people don't want to engage in that conversation. They're so focused on getting it done, and they're so focused on moving forward and like getting all this stuff going that they're like, well, I don't know, I'll deal with that at the time. And then at the point in which we are at that time, they have to then figure out and kind of work out what are they happy and willing to do. So part of me, when you say how long do I leave it to offer a new offer, a month? I mean, it can be whatever you want. Some people have just got a rolling thing. I think a month's quite nice, but I would always personally go down the road of having something behind the scenes in your funnel that people can access, and then or you have something permanent that's just like a permanent policy in the business. So it might be that you always, get something free. Like maybe it's like, a newsletter sign up and you're always going to get 10% off, or you're always going to have a free class. You can access one class for free, and that's just like the thing that they have on all the time. Sometimes having a permanent thing like that works. The other thing to remember is do not get sucked into this idea that price is the main reason people are not buying, or is going to be, or don't buy into this reason that the intro offer is going to be the reason that they're going to say yes. Because for most of the time it isn't. For most of the time it is a marketing issue. It is a messaging issue. It is a lack of understanding of how you present your offering and your service and what you have to support people with. And so really thinking about why, like, the intro offer is always the kind of like easy cop out, in the sense of people just want to do it because they think it's going to magically help people. And I'm not saying that it doesn't work. It really does, right? Having an offer, especially if it's an irresistible offer, you're going to get loads of people through the door. And some people do have the issue of they just need to get people through the door in order for them to understand and conceptualize what it is they're offering, and then they will buy from that. And as long as you've got a good sales process on the back end of that and a good upsell system, that's totally fine. Maybe you can calculate in your business that you can take a hit of however much money you're going to lose because it works for X, Y, and Z thing, because X percent of people will then go on to spend X amount of money. That is totally fine if you have that all figured out and that's working for you. But you must get really clear and figure out, where is this actually not? Are we putting an offer in there, but it's not really the thing that's going to budge people? The reason I am cautious about intro offers and about any kind of offer when we're removing money from things is that if you are doing something with an intro offer where you want people to continue to buy from you, so it's not a one-time service. So I'm not talking about, let's just say you're a beauty salon and maybe you're offering like a special monthly discount on a service. Fine, that's a separate conversation that we're going to have. This conversation we're having is if you have some kind of membership, if you have some sort of thing that is an ongoing service that you want people to keep buying either packages of or just a repeat service at a decent frequency. Sometimes if you fill that intro offer, if that intro offer is really good, you're going to end up with the complete wrong people that you actually want in there in terms of a continual basis. What you will end up with is potentially a group of people who buy because they love a special offer and they just like buying special offers. And then you've got this smaller group of people that were going to buy and join anyway. Now, that is not me saying that you should sort of eradicate those people who are only buying because of a special offer, because actually really clever and smart businesses will build a whole pricing and marketing system. This is getting very in-depth, but based on those group of people, and they will service those people, and then we'll figure out how they can make, 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures a year off just that segmentation of people. I know we're kind of veering off track, but I feel like this might be helpful for someone if you're in this situation. So really, this comes back to understanding who you're serving and understanding what is it that you're trying to overcome. An offer is often there to try and reduce the blow, to help with conversion, and to get more people saying yes. But then it's like, well, what else can you do? And I think the other thing is really figuring out what the offer is. So I don't think there's anything wrong at all. If you have got an intro offer and then you want to, you want to have one continuously going on. If the offer changes, I think that's fine. And I think if you can do it in a really clever way, right? So if, say, for the first intro offer was like a big discount, a monetary discount, you wanted to get people in the door and that was the thing, right? Fine, done that. Then the second offer I would suggest is that it is a different offering. So maybe it's not money off, but maybe it's more value add. So maybe they get, an extra class, or maybe they get some accessories to go with whatever it is that they're selling. Like whatever it is you're selling, do you have any accessories that you can add on to that, but they get those for free? So then it's a value add rather than a money reduce. Those two are very different. And it tends to sit better with a consumer if they've kind of not necessarily missed out, but you're sort of sat there going, okay, well, I bought the special offer, but now there's another offer, but does that apply? Because you might be able to say, and this depends how you structure the offer, but it might be that the people that bought the intro offer can also then buy the second offer because it's offering something else and it isn't just exclusively for new clients. Now, if it is for new clients, that's fine. I'm just trying to give you an understanding of how fluid this can be, but also hopefully from this response, you're really understanding how considered I would ideally like your sales and your promotional offerings to be. People put promotions and offers just so willy-nilly out there and they just decide one day they're going to be like, right, we're going to do this, or they have a meeting with their accountant and things are not where they want to be and they're like, right, okay, we need to make this money, and they sort of do these bizarre creations of offers and they don't really understand and sit with what does that mean for 3 months time, 6 months time, 12 months time, 24 months time. The impact on brand is so huge with promotional offers that you have to be really careful. A great example of this is, right, there will be restaurants that you will not go to and pay full price because you know that you will always be able to find somewhere a voucher, whether that's 10%, 20%, 40%. There'll be some, have a think in your head, is there some restaurants or some fast food chains where you're like, I'd never pay full price? Or maybe it's like a clothing thing where you're like, I know there's always a 20% off coupon somewhere. That is fine, right? If that's part of the brand. And it's not me saying as well, by the way, that if you're a luxury brand or you have a really high service that you can't ever offer a discount or an offer, because that's not true. Some of the best brands and, some of the brands I buy off they're not sort of a cheap mass market thing, they still have some kind of promotional offering going on. So it's not that we're saying that it's one or the other and you can't be both, but it's about you must understand what that impact and what you're choosing inadvertently, unconsciously often, by your actions of how you address your offers. If you're a service-based, predominantly online business, if you're talking about like coaches or consultants, you know that I am not a huge fan of most promotional offerings. I think having it once a year or twice a year is a yes, potentially. But again, I'm not going to go into the whole ins and outs if that's you, because someone asked that question and someone bring the question up again and we can do it specifically for that industry, because that's a whole other ballpark. But really, really think about what is the objective of the offering? Why are you putting an offer out? What are the other components of making that goal, achieving that goal? Because your offering is just a tactic. Your offering is just one alias of all the other stuff that you can do to get to that goal. And sometimes we have to be really mindful of that when we're building these things out. Okie doke. Right, next, we are switching slightly to kind of social media and content, which is great because this moves into what we're talking about. So, question 4. How do you keep motivated and momentum for socials when you're so busy? This is hard. I think this is really, really difficult. And I think most business owners will turn around and say, yeah, we've got this issue. Whether they're making £1 million a year or multiple millions a year, or whether they're literally just starting out. Most business owners I have a conversation with, this is a topic that comes up. Even if they've got a big team. Because they've either got the situation where they're not utilising the team, or they're putting out content that they're not really vibing with and not really feeling great, but they're doing it because, they've got them hired and yada yada. There's a whole other things going on. So how do you keep momentum and motivation? Strategy, it'll always come down to strategy in my opinion. Having a strategy really helps. Having a clear plan of, we're posting this, we're doing that, and we know why. It's not just we're creating this because we can. It's I know why, because it is linked to our strategy and it's linked to a sales thing and it's linked to X, Y, and Z thing. That will help reduce the barrier of how you're going to make it happen, which will then usually help with the motivation. In terms of momentum, I would say it is about spending a concentrated piece of time doing it. So rather than you spending half an hour every day doing it, just spend 3 or 4 hours a week. If that has to be that, it might be an hour a week, or maybe it's 2 days a month, where your sole focus for that day or the hour is on the socials and getting that sorted, and then having someone else can deal with posting it and managing it and actually doing it. That will help with the motivation piece. It's similar to this podcast, right? I have 1 day a month where I sit and record podcasts. If I was doing the podcast every single week, I wouldn't be able to give it the focus that it needs, and I'd probably find it a bit of a drag. But I don't, because I only do it once a month, and so I'm excited for that day. The day comes around, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do the podcast. I spend some time the day before, a couple of days before, planning what the episode is and what I want to talk about. We might have a strategy meeting about it, but then at the point in which I've recorded it, everything else gets uploaded to someone else and they deal with it. And so it is a machine and it runs every week, and you guys get it every week, which is great. But in terms of me and my time and my motivation, it isn't causing me every week to have to record something and think of something and set up and all the things that go into it. And your socials, your other social media outputs can be similar. Now, I'm not saying that you need to batch every single piece of social content, because I think many people are at the point where they think, actually, if they batch all of it, sometimes it just feels very flat and it can get boring. But I would really suggest that you think about, what is your strategy? What is your posting cadence? What is the outcome? What are you trying to achieve? Are you on the right platforms? Do you want to try a new platform? Sometimes people, it's they actually need to try something else, or they want to switch up their content. Motivation often is their lack of inspiration. So often it's where can you go and seek inspiration of content you like to consume? What do you enjoy? What do you want to create for your business? Where do you feel like life is? Go and find life on social media. There's always life going on social media, just might not be happening for you. So go and seek out that and find, what do you like, what you don't like? And really figure out, okay, well, maybe we could try this. The other thing I would suggest is really figuring out, what does momentum mean for you? Because momentum means something different to everybody, and really understanding, okay, I want to keep momentum with socials and I'm busy. But what does momentum actually mean and look like? Because if you understand that in yourself and for what that means for the business, it then becomes a lot easier for you to differentiate between, I'm busy so the momentum drops, or I'm busy but my focus wavers on that. Because those two are different things. And actually, we can argue that you can still be busy and momentum can still go, depending on your definition. But is it about your attention wavering? And I think what that question that you've asked is actually about attention wavering. It's about, my motivation fades, my attention wavers, therefore it kind of gets left behind. But actually, if you build a really solid system in your business, that can still be true. The two things that you've said can still be true. The motivation can fade and the wavering can happen, but the momentum can still stay. And I know that's really contextualized and something that maybe you wanted a real practical answer to, but I think, again, it's about coming back to, if you have been doing this, which I know the person that asked this, for years and years and years, and that is you've been going at this for ages and ages, and you're a very good business owner and you're esteemed at it, it's normal that you're not going to be motivated. It's normal that you're going to kind of feel like, oh, momentum's a bit flapped. But then really thinking about, okay, well, how does that not matter? How can we make that so that's taken out of the equation? Other simple things, monthly understanding, what are you trying to communicate with people? In Year of Clarity, we get people to just sit, there's a box every month where they say, what is their market messages? What are they trying to convey to people? What are they saying? Having that every month is a checkpoint to say, okay, what is that? And then how does that feed your strategy? And if you can have some sort of template or some kind of system where it's an outline of your strategy with your cadence and the type of content you want to create and what if you have content pillars, great. And then you install into that your monthly kind of thoughts around it, that will really help. Similarly, having an understanding of what time and days and how often in a month do you publish X, Y, and Z content, it then becomes a lot more of an easy exercise of input and stuff. So for example, the CEO edit, That has taken us, which is an email for anyone who doesn't know, join the list. There'll be a link below. It's an email that gets sent every Tuesday. That took us years and years and years to actually get into the flesh of real life. We had various roadblocks to make that happen, and I've just discussed that briefly elsewhere. But we are now on, I think it's edition like 68, is it maybe? I don't know. We're kind of well into the flow of it, over a year of consistently doing it every week. And this year, for example, it was really easy for us to just create the whole year. I think we've got a whole year. We don't have it created, sorry, but have a planning system with a whole year in, where all of the themes are in there, the quotes, the different areas of the thing of the email that we know that we build. We've got a lot of that already built out. And so we just have to go in and add a few other bits, and then someone else builds it. Now, that only happened from us, the joy of being able to get really used to doing what we do with it. And that I don't think that is possible to happen from the start, because sometimes it's just too overwhelming. Like, we definitely weren't able to make that happen. But this year we were. And so really thinking about how can you systemize stuff so that it becomes so much easier and lighter for you. And I really want to urge you and think about, you do not need a massive team for this. Like, you don't need to have loads of people in order to create a system from it. It could just be you plus a VA. And the VA's job is really focused on, how do we get this volume of content we want to put out there? As long as you're happy with the creation, maybe it's a video that you're creating or the raw piece of content, or if they're creating it, but then you're signing it off and reviewing it, and maybe you're helping with captions, etc. As long as you've got that system in place, it will help keep it going. Because also you have to remember, naturally there is peaks and flows of when you're motivated and when you're not. And so you can lean into that. But as long as you've got a base system of like a cadence that is going to get posted regardless of whether you're feeling great or not, then at least your business is still moving forward and your marketing is still doing something. And then at the times in which the motivation is there, you can add stuff on, and you can, jump into things in a bit more detail and feel like you're more connected to it. The final question. This is quite a long episode, apologies. The final question is, what do I do if my content is not getting any engagement, likes, etc.? Okay, great one. I think this is a great question, and something that I have spoken with people about since the start of the year quite a lot, because depending on what platforms you're using, I think quite a few platforms are going through a real period of adjustment, and they're figuring out what it is that they're doing and what they're prioritizing. Or they're saying they're prioritizing something, but people are finding that is the complete opposite. I'm not really here to talk about whether or not that's right, wrong, what's happening, because ultimately I don't really like buying into the conversation where everyone's like, oh, this is all shit and it's all really bad, because there isn't. People are winning on social all the time. People are having the best time ever. They're growing massively. You have to just, often the content's shit, yeah? Let's just, we've all got crap content. We're all doing stuff that we know we shouldn't be. Like, it's not always the platform's fault. It's often ours. So taking self-accountability is really important. However, this is an interesting question, mainly on the basis that people are really have a heavy value on engagement. And that's important because, you can draw conclusions from engagement. If you're trying to be an influencer or you're some sort of person that is trying to get sponsorship, then engagement is important because it's one of the things that they need to see. However, if you're a business owner, there is an argument that engagement is not really necessarily the thing you do need to be chasing. A case in point example is my content, May James content, particularly, let's just say on Instagram. That does not get a lot of engagement. Sometimes it might get a bit, sometimes it gets nothing. Like, sometimes a post will literally get no likes. Now, there's a huge plethora of reasons as to why that is. However, people save it. People refer it to me all the time. They'll be like, oh, I saw this the other day and it was really great and I loved it and this is blah, blah, blah. Or I booked a sales call because I really enjoy seeing this thing that you talk about all the time. They've never liked, I don't know they exist, like they just appear, right? So, and I'm a real one for this because I'm also not great at engaging, and I'm trying to be much better at it. But particularly, say on TikTok, for example, I spend a lot of time as a consumer on TikTok. I'm rarely I'm not commenting, I'm not doing all the actions that would need to be done that would help the person who's creating it feel like, oh, I'm a really great creator and, this is really working. So placing a lot of value on engagement is a really tricky one. As I say, if you're trying to be an influencer, or you are an influencer or a creator or some kind of educator in that space that, you know, you need brand sponsorship as part of your business model, then fair enough, that's something you need to chase. But for a lot of people, it's kind of shifted and it doesn't necessarily need to be as much of a thing. However, we are also not sat here saying that engagement doesn't matter and that if you have loads of engagement that doesn't mean anything, because it does. If you have a really engaged audience, that's bloody beautiful. It's an absolute win in this day and age. Like, if you've got an incredible community where people are commenting and they're liking and they're sharing and they're tagging you and things, and you can see that people are engaged, like, that is a fantastic place to be. So it's not me saying don't care, and it's not me saying don't strive for it, because actually there's huge value, particularly in 2024, of having a strong, engaged audience. So let's just move and talk about what can you do if you do want engagement. Because there's nothing wrong with wanting engagement. What you need to think about is, are you posting engagement-based content? So depending on your business, we could argue that every business should be posting a variety of different types of content that's going to be, you know, engaging, entertainment, and educational. It might be helping people feel really connected to something. They might feel seen in something. Not every piece of content has to be tick every box. Some businesses will post certain types of content consistently. So it's like some businesses just love posting educational content. Some people are posting entertaining content, like whatever. Obviously, I would normally suggest having a mixture of stuff's really bloody great. And also just remind you, like, when people talk about content pillars, your content pillars, in my opinion, is not inspire, educate, convert, you know, all that kind of jazz. In my world, content pillars is around what specific topics and areas are you talking about, and then you from that create types of content to fit those other buckets. So you might create an educational piece of content around one of your pillars that is X type of topic. So don't get that mixed up, because I think a lot of people get mixed up, and that's how they end up with content where it's like all one type of content. So let's just think about, if you want engagement, controversial content works really well. So opinion-based content will spur people to want to type, rightly or wrongly. Might want to, don't know if you're going to want that engagement, but, you know, they can type. If you want shareable content, then posting something where people feel and seen in themselves or is inspirational. So like a quote. You're much more likely to get someone sharing something, which you can class as an engagement, if it's a shareable piece of content, versus a sales piece of content where you're, you know, got a carousel of how your offer works. Unlikely someone's going to share that. They might save that though. They also might not do anything with that. But it doesn't mean that it's a bad piece of content. It doesn't mean that the one that's shared is a good piece of content. I'd also argue that a lot of shareable content sometimes is not that great, but it's shareable. And so really understanding what is it about the engagement that you want. What is really interesting is when people post updates or like, news. So news within a business. And we post this, you know, sometimes if there's like, on our blog, we have a press release section. And sometimes we will post on social around those ideas. You might find you get quite a lot of engagement from that. If it's a celebration of something, or if you're saying, you know, we've done this and this is really cool. That can be a nice way to get engagement. Educational based stuff can work quite well in the sense of, if it's something that's really helping someone, some people will comment saying, you know, this was really helpful, thank you, or I've never thought about this like this, but I really appreciate your viewpoint on that. Like, that might get engagement. But again, it's coming back to, who is your ideal client and how are they consuming social media? How do they behave on social? Because if you're targeting, you know, a 18-year-old who's just left school, or you're targeting I don't know, let's just say a 60-year-old who is just about to retire, the way in which they interact and engage with content will be different. So doing a piece of work around understanding how does the general population of your sector of ideal client behave can be really interesting for you to see. I think the difficult question of surrounding the question that is being asked here is often around, how do I know if the content is crap or not? I suppose, like, that's the thing that often a lot of us are like, well, is it good? Is it crap? Is no one seeing it? And that can be a hard one, right? Because it's so subjective. It's so dependent on so many factors. And that can be really tricky. What I would say is test as many pieces of content as you can. Just see it as a playing field of like, let's just go into hell with it has to be XYZ thing and it has to look like this. And if it flops, it's really bad. Let's just try and say, it doesn't matter if it fails. It doesn't matter if no one sees it. Like, it doesn't matter if it's an absolute disaster. We're not going to delete it. We're still going to leave it there. But we'll just try other content styles and you will see what your audience connects with. The other really important piece of that is different, and we see this in the business so much. Like, I can't tell you, if I want like one golden nugget from this might be it. I can't tell you how much this is true. So, different types of content will engage and ignite and will activate different members of your existing audience and community. And I see this so much. Like, different pieces will literally speak to people and some they're just never going to speak to. So you only picking one type of content is really limiting how you're going to access a wider variety of people. And I think a lot of people resonate with that because a lot of people will say to me, we've got this audience of 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 6,000 people, but only 10% have bought from me, or 5%, or 1% even have bought from me. What about the other 90%? What about the other 95%? Like, how are we going to talk to them? Why do we not get them? One of the easiest ways to just even test trying to do something about it is looking at different content styles and looking at how do you post them. Because that inevitably we have seen, and other businesses I've worked with have seen, a real interest in sort of payback from that and an interesting observation, which then allows you to be able to explore further what you might do to aid your engagement. So that is my answer. I feel like we've had a bit of a long episode today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I love doing a Q&A because I think it really targets, what is on people's minds and what people are thinking about. I will speak to you next week. Take care and have a fabulous one. Bye.